Press the bell icon on YouTube and don't miss another update.
Let me start by asking you, you have in your book this sentence, and let me read this out, that the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi, is making a brazen attempt to rewrite the rules of parliamentary democracy, to erect on the ruins a theocratic, majoritarian and authoritarian state. Now those are very harsh words.
They're not untrue, they're true. For example, today the cabinet has been reduced to a rubber stamp. I'm told cabinet meetings, cabinet discussions take place for no more than a few minutes.
When you say you're told, what does that mean?
Well, this is what people in the know, people tell us privately.
In the cabinet, people in the cabinet.
There are only one or two ministers who speak up occasionally.
Like who?
Well, I'm told the road transport minister speaks up occasionally.
Mr. Nitin Gadkari.
He has reduced ministers and ministries to no more than endorsing whatever is approved in the PMO. Take, for example, the Constitution Amendment Bill for the 10% reservation for economically weaker sections.
Right.
The bill was approved by the cabinet on the evening of the 6th.
Right.
On the 7th morning, the Minister of State for Social Justice and Empowerment answers a question in Parliament saying, no such bill is under contemplation.
This is 7th of January.
Yeah, 7th of January. On the 7th morning, the cabinet minister introduces the bill in the Lok Sabha and the bill is passed. On the 8th of January, it is introduced in the Rajya Sabha and the bill is passed. Right. Now, what kind of discussion took place in the cabinet where the Minister of State, obviously instructed by the Secretary, submits a written answer to Parliament on the 7th of January that no such proposal is under consideration?
So what does this show to you?
It shows that decisions are taken only in the PMO.
Okay.
The secretaries are called in the morning, handed over a copy of the draft cabinet note or the decision, and told to go and get the minister's signature.
So the minister has no clue what is happening in his own ministry?
Well, this is what practically, every minister says, of course, privately.
No, but you named Nitin Gadkari just now, the road and transport.
You named him.
I named him, but you talked about the road, transports and highways minister, and that is
He's the
Mr.
only one, for example,
okay,
who asked a question when demonetization was shared with the cabinet on the 8th of November 2016.
So it was shared with the cabinet?
Yeah, without a cabinet note. There was no cabinet note. They were called to the cabinet meeting. They were told to wait. Then a note was laid on the cabinet, or the Prime Minister announced it, and then said, all of you kindly stay back. I'm going to go on television to make an announcement. So all the ministers were virtually captive in the cabinet room for about an hour or so, and the Prime Minister went on TV to announce demonetization.
So while he announced demonetization on the 8th of November 2016, his cabinet was in a room?
Well, that's what we are told.
Hearing him make this statement?
Well, he may have told them at the cabinet meeting, this is what I intend to do, and I'm going across to the TV speech.
And there was no discussion, you're saying?
No, because nobody knew what it was about.
So can you tell us what your sources are?
Well, obviously, you won't tell me your sources, so why should I tell you my sources? Has anyone denied it? We have said it publicly several times.
Okay. So this government, the Narendra Modi government, he's the man on the top and he's making all the decisions and he doesn't take his cabinet colleagues into confidence.
He has succeeded.
That's your accusation.
Well, I'm not accusing. I'm stating facts, or stating facts as we know it. He has successfully implemented half his promise. He said minimum government, maximum governance. He has implemented minimum government. The government has been now reduced to the PMO.
Okay. Now, you also in your book talk about Sushma Swaraj, who has been reduced to a former shadow of her exuberant self. What are you saying, that this is in the same vein of that?
It is. She doesn't accompany the Prime Minister on any of his foreign visits. She's not authorized to hold negotiations on any bilateral or multilateral matters. So she has, as I said in my book, invented a role for herself as a good Samaritan. Apparently...
That's not such a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea. Apparently, the people of India wanted a good Samaritan, and she has very smartly invented a role for herself as a good Samaritan. I actually compliment her on inventing a role for herself.
But you're also being slightly patronizing, I would imagine.
Not at all.
Yes, you are. To say that you're complimenting her on being a good Samaritan, I mean, that is patronizing, and it is quite condescending too.
It's not. It's the way you look at it. You see, when you're faced with a situation where you're not allowed to lead the ministry or take a decision, she has, I think, found a way to keep herself relevant, and the way she has found is useful to people in distress. I'm not at all patronizing. I'm complimenting her genuinely for inventing a role. There are many other ministers who have no role at all and can't invent a new role for themselves.
Like who?
Well, most others.
No, but let's take the four ministers on top. Finance Minister Arun Jaitley. You've already talked about Sushma Swaraj. Then there is the Defense Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and the Prime Minister himself. These are the four people on top.
The Finance Minister, when he was taken into confidence about demonetization, you should ask him whether there is a file which contains notes, drafts, pros and cons being discussed about demonetization, whether there was any meeting with any economists within the government, outside the government, which he took as a prelude to examining the merits of demonetization. I think we should ask them that question.
Since you're raising this, I imagine you know some of the answers. So when do you think he was taken into confidence?
Well, maybe a few hours or a couple of days before, but all the evidence points to, all the information points to, there was no discussion within the Ministry of Finance about a proposal as radical as demonetization.
What is your comment on the notings that we have so far, which is that the Prime Minister's office was carrying out parallel negotiations when the Rafale deal was being negotiated by the Ministry of Defense?
See, one by one, the facts are tumbling out. That's what will happen if you try to put a lid over the truth. Now, it tumbled out that you reduced 126 aircraft to 36 aircraft, and that was always a mystery. We wanted to know why.
But perhaps they wanted to get them quickly because the Indian Air Force...
quickly?
Well, it does take time to produce planes.
Good.
So I think it does take 3 or 4 years.
Order 126, let them come in their own course.
They will come in their own course, but this is something...
Why did you order only 36 is the question. You're only getting 1 plane a month. I have no quarrel. So 36 planes will come in 36 months. You order 126, let it come in 126 months. So we were always wondering why 126 was reduced to 36. So the first revelation is that the amortization was done over 36 aircraft, which gave a huge bonanza to Dassault, because Dassault will recover its money, development costs, not over 126 aircraft, will recover it in 36 aircraft.
Okay.
Number two, if you order the 37th aircraft from Dassault, it will be benchmarked to the price of 36 aircraft, so the price gets bumped up. That is the first set of revelations. The second set of revelations showed that the Prime Minister's office was conducting a parallel negotiation. Somebody as senior, there's nobody senior than that, as a defense secretary uses words like, these parallel negotiations undermine India's negotiating position seriously. The word undermine, the word seriously. 4 months later, not next day, not in 2 days, not in 3 days when a file should be normally disposed of. 4 months later, the defense minister writes on the note saying, you are overreacting. For 4 months, he could not say you're overreacting.
No,
the third set of revelations is worse. There is no clause on anti-corruption, there's no clause on anti-commission, anti-broker, there's no clause for access to the books of account of Dassault and the other supplier. There is no sovereign guarantee, there is no bank guarantee, there is no escrow account.
Right.
I mean, what is going on?
Yeah, so Mr. Mohan Kumar, now retired Defense Secretary at the time, who made these some of these notings, has said publicly that he was not talking about the pricing, that he was talking about the sovereign guarantees and the bank guarantees. Now, there can be answers.
But there's no sovereign guarantee.
Yes,
there's no bank guarantee.
Yeah,
so what has Mr. Mohan Kumar got to say about that?
Because the Indian Air Force had said at the time that if you do a bank guarantee, then that will bump up the price of the plane. One of the arguments in favor of these parallel negotiations by the PMO is that the Prime Minister wanted to cut through the crap, the bureaucratic clutter, and say that, listen, the Indian Air Force needs these planes. I'm going to Paris. I think it's a good aircraft. Let me buy them.
Correct. But you bought them at an exorbitant price. You bought them at a price where the entire development costs were loaded on 36 aircraft, not on 126 aircraft. You gave away 30,000 crore of rupees without a standard sovereign guarantee or a bank guarantee or even an escrow account. The financial advisor to the Defense Ministry says this is unprecedented, and you amended after the Cabinet Committee on Security had approved the IGA, you amended it and removed all these clauses.
So what are you saying? Are you saying, as your leader Rahul Gandhi is saying, that Chowkidar, who the Prime Minister likes to call himself, chor hai?
All I say is there is enough and more evidence warranting a JPC. Can you deny that? Put your hand on your heart and say, following the revelations made in 3 articles written by a leading paper.
Are you doing 30 years later a Bofors redux?
No, we're not.
Which is that the opposition at the time, the BJP, was demanding a JPC into Bofors.
I'm only a news.
You were minister in the Rajiv Gandhi government, pardon me, and you guys did not want a JPC, but you were forced to have a JPC, and today you want a JPC into the Rafale deal.
Because even today, there is no evidence that an Indian minister or an Indian official received any money in Bofors. That was set out in black and white in Justice Kapoor's judgment.
Absolutely.
And the BJP government of Mr. Vajpayee did not appeal that judgment.
I agree.
That's final.
Yes.
Now on Rafale, I'm not drawing any conclusions. All I'm saying is the material available to the country today sufficient to warrant an inquiry by a parliamentary committee? These are not matters, according to me, amenable to judicial decision making.
So even if the Supreme Court asks for all the files on Rafale, you still feel that the Parliament must inquire into it?
Well, firstly, the Supreme Court has made it clear that they do not have the jurisdiction under Article 32 of the Constitution to go into the question of price, to go into the question of number of aircraft.
Right.
But the heart of the matter is the price and the number of aircraft. If the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, says we decline to go into the matter, we accept it.
But you still want a parliamentary...
A parliamentary committee can ask these 2 questions. Tell us about the way the price was arrived at, and you satisfy us.
Now
Tell us about why the number was reduced to 36 and satisfy us.
Now, Rahul Gandhi, the president of the Congress party, has been saying for several weeks now, Chowkidar chor hai. He's accusing the Prime Minister of directly being involved in the Rafale deal.
It's now clear that the Prime Minister's office was conducting parallel negotiations.
But does that lead to the conclusion that he may be personally involved?
It may or may not, I don't know.
But that's what your leader is.
But that you have to hold an inquiry. Why is the government fighting shy of holding an inquiry? All that we are asking is parliamentarians should look into the matter. Is there not ample material to justify not some third committee, a parliamentary committee looking into the matter? World over, Parliament has control over the executive. A US Congress will look into it, a British House of Commons committee will look into it, a Japanese Diet committee will look into it, an Australian Parliament committee will look into it, an Indian Parliament's committee can't look into it.
But the Prime Minister's comment right from the start when he becomes Prime Minister in 2014, his first big statement is, "Na main khaunga na khane dunga." I will not allow corruption.
We accept that. We accept that statement at face value.
Yeah.
Now we have evidence to show that you have eliminated the corruption clauses. The 3 anti-corruption clauses have been eliminated from an agreement.
Why do you think?
I don't know. He has to answer that. It has only come out this morning. If he says that he will not eat and he will not let others eat. It's a very attractive statement, like as many other statements. Achhe din aane wale hai, and 2 crore jobs and 15 lakhs in everybody's bank account. These are very attractive promises. But today the evidence is 3 crucial clauses, which are called the anti-corruption clauses, where originally in the agreement, they were deleted by an amendment. Somebody has to explain why, no?
Are you making a linkage with the Anil Ambani contract that Dassault has signed?
That's a very different matter.
Okay.
We are now talking about the manner in which this contract was finalized and signed.
What is your view? 4 years later, elections are around the corner. What is this government's position on corruption?
Oh, I think it's a very dubious position. I think there are and time will reveal many favors done to select business groups.
Do you want to name any? You're making a lot of...
I won't name them.
Okay.
As and when they come out, you will know.
Okay. And you are not talking about the Anil Ambani contract?
I'm not talking about any individual or any company or any business. I'm not concerned about that.
Right.
I'm concerned about my role as a parliamentarian and the right of parliament to oversee the executive.
Mr. Chidambaram, you yourself and your son have been accused precisely...
This is completely irrelevant. Listen to me.
Yeah.
This is completely irrelevant to the interview. You are breaching your faith, breaching your word, and therefore I suggest either wind up the interview or scrap the interview. You think you will intimidate me by this question? You're wrong.
There is no intimidation, it's a question.
Of course you are. Of course you are. I do not allow the media to do a trial. It may be in your rule book that the trial should be done in the media. Please don a lawyer's robe, or please get appointed as a judge, come to Patiala court and we'll argue the case.
We are talking about the Rafale, and now I do want to talk to you about the NSSO report and the jobs crisis, which you allude not just in the book and not just in your columns, but also in Parliament. So as a leader of the Congress party and as an economist and a former finance minister, what is your view?
There is overwhelming evidence that labor participation has declined in the last 3 years. There is evidence that total employment has declined in the last 3 years. In 2018 alone, 1.1 crore jobs were lost. In demonetization, that year of demonetization, a huge number of jobs were lost. And all this points to a huge crisis of unemployment. And the numbers, official numbers, which were suppressed by this government but were leaked out, is that unemployment has touched a 45-year high of 6.1%.
So what is it that happened with demonetization?
Well, demonetization destroyed small and medium enterprises. The industry minister of Tamil Nadu has formally made a statement in the Tamil Nadu legislature that in Tamil Nadu alone, 50,000 SMEs were closed down, 5 lakh jobs were lost following demonetization.
And you said somewhere that 1% to 1.5% of the GDP was shaved off.
From 8.2%, GDP came down to 6.7%.
Right.
But now, of course, they have manipulated the numbers to say that the year of demonetization showed the highest growth. 7.1 has been bumped up to 8.2.
So how does corruption...
So what they should do now is do another round of demonetization, demonetize the 100 rupee note, and growth will go up to 9% now.
Mr. Chidambaram, that's an unfair thing to say when people are reeling under...
It's not unfair. That's what they have done. The year of demonetization, this government brazenly says, puts out figures saying that the growth rate has gone up to 8.2%. They are not allowing the NSSO, they are not allowing the CSO to publish data which they have gathered and analyzed. They have allowed a completely incompetent and extraneous body like Niti Aayog to sit over data.
So what is the linkage between the suppression of the report by the NSSO and the data that you're saying, this 8.2% GDP?
NSSO data is about employment.
Yes.
CSSO data is about growth.
Okay.
Both must be allowed to function freely.
And this 8.2%, that GDP growth that they are releasing, so you're saying that this has nothing to do with the data that has been suppressed?
It's beyond anyone's comprehension how in the year of demonetization the growth rate can be the highest under the Modi government, 8.2%.
And that is completely unbelievable because
Well, nobody believes it, and it's not reflecting the other indicators, private investment.
So
That year, for example, private investment was low at 28.5 from a high of about 34. Credit growth to industry was negative, and yet you say that growth is 8.2.
In this interim budget, Piyush Goyal, who is standing in for Mr. Jaitley, has talked about a 3.4 current account deficit, and inflation has also been controlled.
3.4 is the fiscal deficit.
Fiscal deficit, and also the inflation is under control.
Of course.
So those are two good things.
Of course. Because food inflation is low, overall inflation is low. But non-food, non-fuel inflation is 5.6%, which is why the RBI is cautioning them. Food inflation is low because food prices have crashed. Last year, Purni variety rice was selling at 1,400 rupees. This year it's selling at 1,000 rupees. It's good for the consumer, but very, very bad for the producer. Since food prices have crashed, your food inflation is low. Since fuel prices from the high of about $70, $80 have crashed to less than $60, your fuel inflation is low. But that doesn't mean the other goods and services which people consume, inflation is low. It's 5.6%.
So let me bring you to some of the social issues that we have been sort of witness to these last 4 years. And one among them is this charge of sedition, for example, against not just artists and filmmakers and journalists, but also against people in the Madhya Pradesh government, in your government, in the Congress government, where they have put the National Security Act, the NSA, against people allegedly who have smuggled the cow or slaughtered the cow.
Sedition is section 124A of the Indian Penal Code, which has been slapped against poets, writers, 3 students of JNU and others. According to me, sedition is a colonial hangover, legacy. The whole section should be repealed.
Did you try and do that when you were Home Minister?
No, we didn't, because there were other priorities, and we were not slapping sedition charges left and right. If we had done it and there was a protest, obviously that issue would have come to boil. It didn't happen. But I think sedition must go. That's my view. And I think most people will agree with that.
And this government is invoking sedition, a colonial era law.
Against students of university. Please understand, speech is free, full stop.
What does it say when in Tamil Nadu, when you talk to people? What do they say about this law that has been invoked against them?
They slapped the sedition law against a Dalit poet because he composed poems against the central and state governments. Outrageous, outrageous.
If you were to come to power, do you think that would be one of the first things you would do?
I think 124A will go, lock, stock and barrel.
Okay. That's good news. So a couple of last questions, Mr. Chidambaram. One on the lynching of cows. What has this done to us?
Well, it's destroyed the cow-related economy. It has destroyed the meat industry. It has destroyed the leather industry. And it's created a sense of fear among certain communities, the Dalits and the Muslims. But what happens to bulls, which have ceased to be useful? What happened to cows, which have ceased to produce milk? That's a serious question. It has to be addressed with logic and common sense. And I'm glad that Sachin Pilot has said that people are more important than cows. I think what he was referring to are cows which have ceased to yield milk and bulls which have ceased to be productive.
But the fact that Muslims like Akhlaq, who was accused of keeping beef in his refrigerator, Punjab, there was no evidence of it much later, although there were 2 points of view. And then Pehlu Khan, this young man who was murdered in Alwar because he was taking cows home. What happens to a country that does these things?
We have to hang our heads in shame. I've written about both incidents. I've used very strong words to condemn them. It's the culture of impunity. The guys who indulge in those kind of crimes think they can get away. If they are arrested, they will be let off. If they are tried, they will be acquitted. If they are jailed, they will find some way to get out of jail. This sense of impunity is what is driving these guys to commit these horrendous crimes.
And yet people are saying, especially the Vishwa Hindu Parishad and the pro-Hindutva groups are saying that they will make a temple in Ayodhya irrespective of what the Supreme Court says.
No, this has nothing to do with the cow issue.
It has nothing to do with the cow issue, but I'm connecting this.
Issue.
Yes, but I'm connecting the fact that these Hindutva groups who are taking matters into their own hands.
The Congress party's position is absolutely clear.
Okay.
There was a dispute, there is a dispute. The Allahabad High Court tried to resolve the dispute. The parties were not satisfied. All of them have come by way of separate appeals. Whatever the Supreme Court decides, the Congress party will accept.
My last question takes me back to this culture of impunity that you talked about. And in Jammu and Kashmir, you've been Home Minister. What is happening in Jammu and Kashmir with so many young people taking to terrorism, to militancy, and the government not being able to handle it?
We had forewarned this government. Look at the figures up to 2014 and even into 2015 after Mr. Narendra Modi took over.
You had forewarned this government?
This has declined sharply. Number of incidents, number of civilians killed, number of militants who were killed, number of young men who had joined militancy had declined progressively, declined in a very visible manner up to 2014 and even into 2015. In 2015, this government adopted this muscular, militaristic, majoritarian policy. And we had forewarned them. I've written about it in columns. They are in the compilation, the present one, the previous one, and the previous one.
No, but you had forewarned them in the public space,
yes,
but no, in the columns. But there was no conversation in Parliament or in the parliamentary committees.
There's hardly any conversation anywhere with this government in Parliament.
So there was no direct sort of warning that, look, this is what we had, our experience was.
Debates in Parliament and people have spoken about it.
Okay.
We had said that this muscular militaristic policy will only drive more young people into the arms of the militant groups. And that's exactly what's happening. Exactly what's happening. Exactly what we feared. And now they have gone a step further, got rid of a government which, at one point or other, the two had to break up. They should have broken up much earlier. They broke up that government and now appointed a governor who seems to be even more muscular and even more militaristic in his approach. Army generals have warned, retired army generals have said this is a wrong policy. Retired civil servants have said it's a wrong policy. People who have worked in Kashmir have said it's a wrong policy. There's so much writing in the media about the policy being wrong, but this government doesn't care.
So are you saying today, how would you describe the situation today? Are you losing Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, I did say in one conversation, we may have lost Jammu and Kashmir, but I hope I'm wrong. I think we are perilously close to losing the Kashmir Valley. See, unless you win over the young generation, the middle-aged and the young generation, if they slip into a position where they see India as an antagonist, as an alien, it's going to be very difficult to retrieve the Kashmir Valley.
So what is this muscular position about? Is it that...
That's what they're doing.
No, but why? Why is it?
That's what they believe in.
Because perhaps they believe that the soft approach hasn't worked and therefore...
The soft approach did work. The soft approach was the one that brought relative peace to Jammu and Kashmir, especially the Kashmir Valley. The numbers speak for themselves. The soft approach which helped people engage with the interlocutors. The three interlocutors did a remarkable job. More and more people came out of their homes and...
But that report was never implemented, which
is a matter of great disappointment to me, that the report was not made public, nor were aspects of the report implemented. Maybe if we had come back in 2014, maybe the report would have been implemented, but that's a speculation.
So now in these days, in the run-up to the 2019 elections, Mr. Chidambaram, your thoughts?
Well, my thoughts are quite simple. We are in danger of losing the original idea of India. This is a liberal, open, democratic, secular, tolerant, multicultural society where economic well-being must be shared by all sections of the people, and above all, people must live without fear. That idea is in grave danger.